The vast emptiness of space carried many secrets, but none as desperate as the weak signal that reached Earth's deep space listening post that night. It was 3 a.m. when the computers first detected it, a pattern too regular to be natural, too urgent to ignore. Jack Miller had been working the night shift for 3 years at the Global Space Communication Center. Most nights passed with nothing but the gentle hum of machines and occasional static from distant stars. This night was different. "Sir, I think you need to see this," Jack called to his supervisor, pointing at his screen where a pulsing pattern flickered steadily. Tom Bennett, head of the night shift, rubbed his tired eyes and leaned over Jack's station. "Run it through the translator." The computer worked for several minutes, the 2 men watching in silence as symbols transformed into words. Asterisk help. Invasion. Death. Please. Anyone. Asterisk. "It's a distress call," Jack whispered. The message repeated, growing clearer with each pass through the translator. It came from a star system nearly 40 light-years away, from a species calling themselves the Lumari. "Forward this to command," Tom ordered, his voice steady despite the chill running down his spine. Now, Commander Alex Ross was not a man easily woken, but the urgent call from Earth Defense Headquarters had him fully alert in seconds. Within an hour, he stood in the steel-walled meeting room where Earth's highest military officials gathered around a large holographic display. "The signal has been repeating for 3 days," General Ward explained, pointing to a blinking dot in the star map. "The Lumari are under attack by a force they call the Blight Empire." "Do we know anything about either of these species?" Ross asked. Admiral Laura Hayes shook her head. "Very little. Since joining the galactic community 5 years ago, we focused on our immediate neighbors. The Lumari are far outside our usual range of communication. Then why are we getting involved?" Someone asked from the back of the room. General Ward's face darkened. "Because no one else will. Our intelligence suggests other advanced civilizations have ignored their pleas. The Lumari are peaceful, with minimal defenses." A silence fell over the room as images appeared on the screen. Fragments of video transmitted alongside the distress call. A beautiful world with spiral structures and glowing blue oceans was being systematically destroyed. Dark ships filled the skies, and creatures moved through the streets, herding the slender, gentle-looking Lumari into transport vessels. "Invasion and slavery," Ross said quietly. "We've seen this before in our own history." General Ward nodded. "Commander Ross, your experience with first contact situations makes you our best option. We're sending you with the scout ship Horizon to assess the situation." "Sir, one scout ship won't be enough if this Blight Empire is as powerful as it seems," Ross pointed out. "This is reconnaissance only, Commander. The full fleet will need time to prepare, and the Council needs more information before committing to a war so far from home." Ross studied the images again, watching as a Lumari child was torn from its parents' arms. His jaw tightened. "When do I leave?" "Immediately," the general answered. "The Horizon is already being prepared." 3 days later, Ross stood on the bridge of the Horizon as it prepared for its first jump through the recently discovered wormhole that would cut their journey from years to days. His small crew of 20 specialists worked efficiently around him, each chosen for their unique skills. "Jump sequence ready, Commander," announced Lisa Chen, his pilot. Ross looked around at his team, at the determination in their eyes. They had all seen the same images, felt the same pull to help a species they'd never met. "Let's go see who needs our help," he said, giving the order to jump. The stars stretched into lines around them as the Horizon entered the wormhole. None of them knew exactly what waited on the other side, but they all understood one thing: if the distress call was genuine, if an innocent species was truly being enslaved and destroyed, then humanity would not stand by and watch. The Blight Empire was about to learn a painful lesson about the species they had yet to encounter. Earth might be new to the galactic stage, but humans had perfected the art of warfare through centuries of fighting each other. Now, that experience would be turned outward to protect rather than destroy. Humanity's wrath was coming. The horizon emerged from the wormhole into a star system that should have been beautiful. Instead, it was a graveyard of ships and debris. Commander Ross stood silently at the viewport, watching as his sensors officer cataloged the destruction. "Multiple spacecraft remains," reported Officer Paul West. "Most appear to be civilian vessels. No weapons systems detected on any of them." Ross clenched his jaw. They tried to escape. As the horizon pushed deeper into the system, they passed a small moon that had been cracked open like an egg, its resources stripped away. Mining equipment still clung to its surface like parasites feeding on a corpse. "Commander, I'm picking up life signs on the third planet," Lisa Chen announced from her station. "It matches the origin point of the distress signal." The blue-green world that appeared on their view screen was nothing like the images they had seen in the distress message. Where once stood spiraling towers and glowing cities, now lay smoking ruins. Dark ships hung in orbit, methodically moving from one area to the next. "Scan shows those ships are heavily armed," West said. "Definitely not Lumari design based on what we know." "The Blight," Ross muttered. "Can we get closer without being detected?" Lisa nodded. "Their scanning technology isn't as advanced as ours. I can use the planet's magnetic field to mask our approach." "Do it. Find us a safe landing zone away from those ships." The surface of the Lumari homeworld smelled of ash and something else, something chemical that burned the back of their throats as Ross led his 5-person ground team through the ruins of what had once been a coastal city. They wore simple environmental suits, not the heavy combat armor that would have drawn attention. "Movement ahead," whispered Maria Jones, their security specialist, raising her hand to halt the group. Something slender and blue shifted behind a fallen column. Ross stepped forward slowly, hands open at his sides. "We're not here to hurt you," he called out. "We received your distress call." Silence answered him. Then a soft voice replied. "Many have come saying those words. They took and took until there was nothing left. We're humans, from Earth. We only learned about your existence when we heard your call for help." A figure emerged cautiously from the ruins, tall, with 4 slender arms and skin that shimmered blue like the ocean. Its large eyes studied them with fear and a flicker of hope. "I am Tela," the alien said, last speaker for the Western Lumari Council. Tela's voice was gentle, melodic, but carried deep exhaustion. "You are very different from the others who walk among the stars." "We're newcomers," Ross explained. "We only joined the galactic community 5 years ago." Tela's eyes widened slightly. "So young. And yet you came when older civilizations turned away." The Lumari led them through hidden passages beneath the ruined city, where hundreds of survivors huddled in darkness. Children with the same blue skin looked up as the humans passed, their eyes enormous in thin faces. "When did the Blight first arrive?" Ross asked as they reached a chamber that once might have been beautiful, with crystal formations now dulled by ash and damage. 3 cycles ago," Tela answered, settling onto a broken bench. "They came with promises of trade. We welcomed them. We had no weapons, no defenses. Our civilization spent thousands of years pursuing art, science, and harmony with our world." The aliens' 4 hands moved in graceful patterns that somehow conveyed deep grief. When they revealed their true purpose, it was too late. They wanted our planet's core minerals and us, for labor in their mines. "You sent the distress call," Ross said. "Many times, to every world we knew. The Ferrani said they could not risk confronting the Blight. The Ordoshi closed their borders. The Thule Empire signed a non-aggression pact." Tela's voice grew bitter. "All watched as we burned." Mike Taylor, the team's medic, was scanning the huddled Lumari with his equipment. "Commander, these people are starving. Some show signs of radiation poisoning." Ross nodded grimly. "How many of your people are left, Tela?" "Once, we numbered 8 billion. Now," the alien looked down, "perhaps 2 million hidden across our world. More are taken to the labor camps each day." Soon, none will remain. The Blight. What can you tell us about their capabilities? Ross asked. They are ruthless, efficient. Their warriors feel no pain, follow orders without question. Their ships darken skies. They have conquered 17 worlds before ours. Tella looked directly at Ross. Why would you help us when others would not? You must know their power. Ross stood and walked to a crack in the ceiling where a thin beam of light illuminated the dust in the air. Humans have a long history of fighting each other, he said quietly. We've done terrible things in our past, but we've also learned when to stand against cruelty. He turned back to Tella. And we don't abandon those who ask for help. A noble sentiment, Tella replied. But sentiment will not defeat the Blight. Ross touched the communicator on his wrist. No, but this might. We need to get a message back to Earth right away. This is suicide, Maria Jones whispered as the small team of 4 humans crouched behind a ridge overlooking the Blight outpost. The dark metal structure jutted from the surface of the Lumari moon like a thorn, surrounded by mining equipment and transport vessels. Commander Ross studied the facility through his binoculars. We need information about their capabilities, their command structure. We can't help the Lumari without knowing what we're up against. Lieutenant Marcus Taylor checked his equipment one more time. Their security systems are primitive compared to ours. I can hack them, but I'll need at least 10 minutes inside their command center. You'll have 5, Ross replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. Dr. Evans, what do your scans show? The scientist looked up from her tablet. Minimal life signs. Most of the work seems automated. I count only 20 Blight soldiers. Those are just the ones we can detect, Maria warned. Their armor might block our scanners. Ross nodded. That's why we go in quiet. Their shift change happens in 30 minutes according to Tella's information. That's our window. The team waited in silence as the pale light of the Lumari homeworld reflected off the moon's surface. Right on schedule, a transport ship descended toward the outpost. As it landed, several armored figures marched on board while others exited. Now, Ross commanded. The 4 humans moved quickly but carefully down the ridge, using the shadows cast by the mining equipment. Their dark suits, designed to absorb light rather than reflect it, made them nearly invisible against the moon's dark surface. They reached a side entrance just as the transport ship lifted off. Marcus quickly attached a small device to the door's control panel. Seconds later, it slid open. 30 minutes until the next security sweep, he whispered. Inside, the outpost was cold and efficient. No decorations, no comforts, just metal corridors leading to workstations. They moved silently past processing rooms where raw minerals were sorted and packed. Command center should be this way, Marcus indicated, following the map Tella had drawn from memory. As they turned a corner, they heard heavy footsteps approaching. Ross quickly motioned the team into a small storage room. Through a crack in the door, they watched as 2 Blight soldiers marched past. For the first time, the humans got a clear look at their enemy. The Blight wore full-body armor that seemed fused to their skin. Where their faces should be, only a smooth helmet with a narrow visor glowed with eerie red light. Are they robots? Dr. Evans whispered once they had passed. No, Ross replied grimly. Tella said they're organic, but heavily modified. The armor is part of them. They continued toward the command center, avoiding 2 more patrols. Finally, they reached a sealed door with alien symbols etched into its surface. This is it, Marcus said, already working on a lock. The door slid open to reveal a room filled with screens and control panels. A single Blight soldier sat at the main console. Before it could react, Maria fired her stun weapon. The creature slumped forward, motionless. Get to work, Ross ordered, dragging the unconscious soldier out of sight. 5 minutes, Marcus. The lieutenant plugged his device into the main console. I'm in. Their security is basic. Wait. His fingers flew across his tablet. This is strange. Their language translates easily, almost like they want to be understood. "What are you finding?" Ross asked, keeping watch at the door. "Tactical plans, ship movements, resource allocations." Marcus's face grew pale. "Commander, they're not just mining here. The Lumari are being processed. Processed. Their bodies. The Blight are harvesting them. For components, for biological material to create more soldiers." He looked up, his eyes haunted. "The Blight aren't conquering. They're consuming." Dr. Evans leaned over his shoulder. "Download everything. And look for weaknesses." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight with anger. "Already on it. I'm also finding fleet coordinates, command codes." His eyes suddenly widened. "Commander, they're planning to move to the next system in 3 weeks, a place called Proxima Centauri." Ross froze. "That's our closest neighboring star." "Earth would be next after that," Maria said, her voice barely audible. An alarm suddenly blared through the outpost. Red lights flashed in the corridor. "We've been made," Ross said. "Marcus." "Almost there." "Got it." The lieutenant yanked his device free. "Everything downloaded. Move out. Back the way we came," Ross ordered. They raced through the corridors as heavy footsteps approached from multiple directions. As they neared the exit, 3 Blight soldiers appeared, weapons raised. "Cover," Ross shouted as energy blasts scorched the wall beside them. Maria returned fire, hitting one soldier directly in the chest. It staggered but didn't fall. "Head for the ridge," Ross commanded, throwing a small explosive device toward their pursuers. The blast bought them precious seconds as they sprinted for the exit. Outside, more soldiers were emerging from other buildings. The team ran in a zigzag pattern toward their hidden shuttle, energy blasts heating the air around them. "Get that intel back to Earth," Ross shouted to Marcus as they reached the shuttle. "Whatever happens, this data has to reach command." As the shuttle lifted off, Ross looked back at the outpost growing smaller below them. The Blight weren't just a threat to the Lumari. They were coming for Earth next. Humanity needed to be ready. The United Earth Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every nation sat in tense silence as the holographic display showed the data recovered from the Blight outpost. Commander Ross stood at attention, his uniform still bearing the dust of the Lumari moon. "This is the enemy we face," Admiral Kate Wilson said, gesturing to the rotating image of a Blight warship. "Their technology is advanced, but not beyond our understanding. What makes them dangerous is their ruthlessness and their numbers." An older man in a gray suit stood up. "Admiral, you're asking us to commit to a war 40 light years from Earth, a war that isn't ours." "With all due respect, Counselor Davis," Ross interjected, "it became our war the moment we learned the Blight are targeting Proxima Centauri next, with Earth clearly in their sights after that." Davis frowned. "We have our own problems here. Climate restoration is still ongoing. The Antarctic colonies need resources. We can't afford to. We can't afford not to." A new voice cut in. All heads turned to see General James Lai, head of Earth's combined military forces. He rarely spoke at council meetings, preferring to let politicians debate while he planned. The general walked slowly to the center of the room. "The Blight consume worlds. They strip them of resources and turn their populations into soldiers or raw materials. If we wait until they reach our doorstep, it will be too late. Our fleet is untested in real combat," another counselor pointed out. "We've only had skirmishes with pirates since unification." Admiral Wilson nodded. "True, but humanity has something the Blight don't expect." She pulled up new images, Earth's history of warfare, from ancient battles to modern conflicts. "For all our flaws, humans are exceptional at adapting during combat. The Blight are efficient but predictable. They've never faced an enemy like us." The chamber erupted in heated debate. Some demanded immediate action, others urged caution or even isolation. Commander Ross watched silently, thinking of the Lumari children hiding in the ruins of their once beautiful world. After hours of argument, Council Leader Maya Patel raised her hand for silence. We have heard many perspectives today. Now we must decide. Do we stand with the Lumari and fight an enemy that will eventually come for us anyway? Or do we hide behind our defenses and hope the blight pass us by? An uncomfortable quiet fell over the room. Then, a woman in the back stood up. Dr. Emma White, the renowned historian, rarely spoke at these meetings. Throughout human history, she said softly, but her voice carried through the silent chamber. We have often been at our worst when fear guided our actions. But we have been at our best when we stood up for others who could not defend themselves. She walked forward, her steps echoing. I have spent my life studying human conflict. The wars we fought against each other nearly destroyed us. But from that darkness came understanding that violence should only serve protection, never conquest. Dr. White looked around the room. If we turn away now, we betray not just the Lumari, but everything we've learned from our own bloody history. Her words hung in the air as she returned to her seat. Admiral Wilson stepped forward again. I have a plan. It's risky, but it uses our strengths against their weaknesses. The blight expect submission or disorganized resistance. They've never faced a species that turned warfare into an art form. She displayed a battle strategy that made even General Lai raise his eyebrows in surprise. This is unconventional, he said. Exactly, Wilson replied. The blight won't see it coming. Council leader Patul looked at the faces around her, then nodded. We will vote now, for or against committing Earth's forces to defend the Lumari and stop the blight before they reach our system. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. 3/4 of the council raised their hands in support. Then it is decided, Patil announced. Admiral Wilson, you have authorization to deploy our fleet. Commander Ross, you will return to Lumari space immediately with our advance forces. As the meeting adjourned, Ross approached Admiral Wilson. Do you think we can win this? The Admiral's face was grim but determined. The blight have conquered 17 worlds, Commander. But they've never met humans before. She looked at the battle plans hovering above her tablet. We're about to teach them why that was their biggest mistake. Back on the horizon, as Ross prepared his crew for the return journey, he received a message from Earth. The main fleet, 200 warships carrying the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created, would follow within days. The blight had awakened something they couldn't possibly understand. Humanity's wrath. The edge of Lumari space was quiet. Too quiet, Commander Ross thought as he stood on the bridge of the horizon. Behind his small scout ship, 50 Earth vessels waited in formation, the advance force of humanity's fleet. Any sign of blight patrols? Ross asked his sensor officer. Nothing yet, sir, Officer West replied. Either they don't monitor this approach or they're hiding. They're watching, Ross said with certainty. They just don't consider us a threat. The communications officer looked up from her station. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the main fleet. Admiral Wilson reports they'll arrive through the wormhole in 6 hours. Ross nodded. Then we stick to the plan. Begin Phase 1. 3 small ships broke away from the Earth formation and disappeared into stealth mode. Their mission: to plant special devices near the 5 major blight bases in the system. Now we wait, Ross said, settling into his command chair. On the blight command ship, General Vex reviewed the reports from his sentries. Earth vessels, he asked, his voice a metallic rasp through his helmet. How many? 50 small ships, General, the officer replied. Primitive weapons. No significant threat. Vex studied the sensor readings. The humans had responded to the Lumari distress call. A curious choice for such a young species. Their ships were indeed small compared to the massive blight cruisers. Why do they come with so few? He wondered aloud. Scan for more ships. Nothing detected, General. This appears to be their entire force. Vex felt something unfamiliar. A slight unease. In 17 conquered worlds, no species had ever come to another's aid. Especially not one so new to space travel. Monitor them closely, he ordered. If they approach any of our installations, destroy them. 6 hours later, the wormhole flared to life. The Blight sensors detected a massive energy surge as Earth's main fleet arrived. 200 warships of various sizes, led by the flagship Defender. On its bridge, Admiral Wilson watched the tactical display. Status of our stealth teams. All devices planted and armed, Admiral, her second-in-command reported. Awaiting your command. Wilson opened a channel to all Earth ships. This is Admiral Wilson. The Blight Empire has enslaved and murdered billions. They plan to do the same to us. Today, we show them that humanity stands against such cruelty. She paused. All ships, Battle Formation Delta. Activate Operation Trojan. The Earth fleet spread out in what appeared to be a standard attack formation. To the watching Blight, it looked like a naive approach, spreading too thin, exposing weaknesses. General Vex almost laughed. They make this too easy. All cruisers target the human vessels and fire at will. The Blight ships moved into position, their weapons charging. They outnumbered the human fleet 3-1, with larger, more powerful vessels. Sir, a Blight officer called out, the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. Let me hear it, Vex ordered. A simple message played through the command ship. To the Blight Empire, this is humanity's answer to those who prey on the innocent. Suddenly, alarms blared across every Blight vessel. The devices planted by the stealth teams activated simultaneously, releasing a specialized virus into the Blight computer systems. What's happening? Vex demanded as his screens flickered. Our targeting systems are failing. An officer reported, panic in his voice. Weapons are offline. Before Vex could respond, the Earth fleet executed a maneuver no Blight tactician had ever seen. The seemingly scattered formation suddenly made sense. It wasn't a weakness but a trap. The human ships moved with incredible coordination, targeting specific points on the Blight vessels that their intelligence had identified as vulnerabilities. Impossible, Vex whispered as he watched 3 of his cruisers crippled in the first volley. On the Defender, Admiral Wilson nodded with grim satisfaction. Phase 2. Deploy the fighter squadrons. Hundreds of small, agile fighters launched from the Earth vessels. Unlike the rigid, predictable attack patterns the Blight used, the human pilots flew with creativity and daring that bordered on recklessness. They dove between the massive Blight ships, hitting engines, weapons arrays, and communication dishes. They're inside our formation. A Blight commander shouted over the communications channel. We can't target them without hitting our own ships. Ross watched from the horizon, coordinating the smaller vessels. The virus won't hold their systems down for long, he warned Wilson. We need to press the advantage now. Agreed. All ships, converge on their command vessel, Wilson ordered. The Earth fleet swarmed toward General Vex's ship like predators sensing wounded prey. Vex stared at the approaching human vessels, feeling something he had never experienced in centuries of conquest. Fear. Retreat, he ordered. All ships, fall back and regroup. As the Blight fleet scattered in disarray, cheers erupted across the human ships. The first battle had been won, but everyone knew the war had just begun. On the Lumari homeworld, the enslaved people looked up to see flashes of light in their sky. Something new had entered their world. Hope. 3 weeks after humanity's surprising victory, Commander Ross stood with Tela on a hill overlooking what had once been the Lumari capital. Below them, human engineers worked alongside Lumari survivors to build defenses around the city. Your people work quickly, Tela observed, her 4 arms moving in patterns that Ross had learned meant gratitude. We don't have much time, Ross replied. The Blight are regrouping. They're calling in ships from other sectors. As if summoned by his words, the sky darkened as massive ships appeared in the upper atmosphere. Hundreds of them, far more than the first battle. Ross's communicator buzzed. Commander, this is Admiral Wilson. Our long-range scanners show over 500 Blight vessels entering the system. They've called in their main fleet. We knew they would, Ross said, watching the dark shapes grow larger. "Are our defenses ready?" "As ready as they can be," Wilson answered. "But we're outnumbered 4-1 now." Ross looked at Taylor. "Get your people to the underground shelters. This is going to get ugly." The Lumari touched his shoulder gently. "May your warriors be strong, Commander. We will not forget what you do here today, whatever the outcome." As Tella hurried away, Ross made his way to the command center established in the ruins of the Lumari government building. Inside, human officers worked at screens showing the approaching Blight Armada. "Status report," Ross demanded as he entered. Lieutenant Marcus Taylor looked up from his station. "Their systems have been updated to counter our virus. We won't be able to use the same trick twice. And our new defenses, untested against their full firepower," Maria Jones replied. "But they're the best we could build with the time we had." Ross studied the tactical display. The human fleet, now reinforced to 300 ships, held position around the Lumari homeworld. Against the 500 Blight vessels, they looked hopelessly outmatched. "Admiral Wilson is requesting all ship commanders join the battle conference," an officer announced. On the main screen, Wilson's face appeared, along with 20 other commanders from various Earth vessels. "The Blight have adapted," the Admiral said without preamble. "They've studied our tactics from the first encounter and adjusted their strategies. This won't be the easy victory we had before." "Nothing worth doing is ever easy," Ross replied. Wilson nodded. "We've received a message from their general. They're demanding our immediate surrender. And if we refuse, they'll destroy the Lumari world completely," Wilson said grimly. "No more harvesting, no more slaves, just complete annihilation." A heavy silence fell over the conference. "We can't win against those numbers," one of the commanders finally said. "Perhaps we should consider a tactical retreat, save our fleet to defend Earth." Ross shook his head. "If we run now, the Blight will know we can be intimidated. They'll come for Earth with everything they have." He stood straighter. "Besides, we gave the Lumari our word. Humans don't break promises." Wilson's face showed a hint of pride. "I agree with Commander Ross. We stand and fight." She turned to her tactical officer off-screen. "Initiate Operation Hornet Nest." The Earth fleet suddenly began to move, splitting into dozens of smaller formations. Unlike their previous organized approach, they scattered in seemingly random patterns. On his flagship, General Vex watched with confusion. "What are they doing? This makes no tactical sense." "Perhaps they're retreating, sir," his second suggested. "No," Vex said slowly. "They're planning something." He studied the movements more carefully. "They're too coordinated for this to be panic." As the Blight fleet pushed forward, the human ships continued their erratic movements, drawing the enemy deeper into the Lumari system. "Sir," a Blight officer called out, "we're detecting energy signatures behind the third moon." Before Vex could respond, the hidden element of humanity's plan revealed itself. 100 stealth ships, held in reserve, emerged from behind the moon. Instead of attacking the Blight directly, they targeted the space between their ships, deploying thousands of small objects. "What are those?" Vex demanded. "Unknown, General. Too small to be weapons." The objects drifted toward the Blight fleet, seeming harmless. Then, on command, they detonated, not with explosions, but with powerful electromagnetic pulses calibrated specifically to the Blight ship's operating frequencies. Ship after ship lost power, weapon systems failing as the pulses washed over them. The carefully organized Blight formation fell into chaos. "Now," Admiral Wilson commanded. The scattered human fleet suddenly converged from all directions, targeting the disabled Blight vessels with surgical precision. On the ground, Ross watched the battle unfold on his screens. "It's working," he breathed. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining Blight ships, still outnumbering the humans, adjusted quickly. They targeted the smaller human vessels, destroying dozens in minutes. "They're breaking through our lines," Jones reported, her face pale as she watched human ships disappear from the tactical display. Ross opened a channel to Wilson. "Admiral, they're going to reach the planet soon. We need to activate the ground defenses." "Do it," Wilson ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos visible behind her on the Defender's bridge. "And Ross, good luck." As the first Blight landing ships punched through the atmosphere, Ross activated the planet's new defense grid. Energy weapons built by human engineers fired from hidden emplacements, targeting the incoming vessels. The battle for the Lumari homeworld had begun in earnest. The sky above the Lumari homeworld burned. Blight landing ships descended through the atmosphere, while human fighters darted between them like angry wasps. On the ground, Commander Ross directed the defense from a bunker deep beneath the ruined capital. "Eastern sector is overrun," Maria Jones reported, her uniform stained with dust and blood. "We're falling back to position Delta." Ross studied the battle map. 3 days of constant fighting had pushed his forces to their limits. In orbit, Admiral Wilson's fleet was down to less than half its original strength. The Blight had lost more ships, but they could afford the losses. Humanity couldn't. "Sir," Marcus Taylor called from his communications station, "Admiral Wilson is requesting to speak with you. Priority channel." Ross took the headset. "This is Ross." "Commander," Wilson's voice came through with static interference. "The Defender has taken heavy damage. We can't hold the orbital line much longer." "We need more time, Admiral," Ross answered, watching as more red dots appeared on the tactical display. "If they get full control of the surface, it's over." There was a pause, then Wilson spoke again, her voice oddly calm. "It's time for the last resort, Commander. Are you ready?" Ross stood straighter. "Yes, Admiral. The packages are in place." "Good. I'm sending the authorization codes now." "Ross," she hesitated. "Make it count." The line went dead as another explosion rocked the bunker. Dust fell from the ceiling as the Lumari huddled in corners, watching the humans with fear and hope mingled in their large eyes. "Marcus, did you receive the codes?" Ross asked. The lieutenant nodded. "Yes, sir. All packages are armed and ready." Ross turned to the Lumari leader Taylor, who had fought alongside them since the beginning. "Get your people deeper into the shelters. The next few hours will be intense." "What are you planning?" Taylor asked. "Something the Blight won't expect," Ross answered. "Something humans perfected long ago. Fighting dirty when the stakes are high enough." On his command ship, General Vex watched with satisfaction as his forces pushed the humans back on all fronts. The strange creatures had fought well, better than any species the Blight had encountered before. But in the end, numbers and power would prevail, as they always did. "The human flagship is crippled, General," his officer reported. "Their fleet is in disarray." "Excellent," Vex said. "Prepare boarding parties for their remaining vessels. Their technology will be useful to us." "Sir," another officer interrupted, "we're detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface. The humans appear to be abandoning their positions." Vex studied the readings. "They're retreating. Order our ground forces to pursue and capture as many as possible." As the Blight forces pushed forward across the Lumari world, the human defenders fell back in seemingly panicked retreat. They abandoned equipment, weapons, even vehicles in their haste. "This doesn't feel right," Vex muttered, watching the tactical display. "The humans have been too clever to simply break now." His suspicion came too late. As the Blight forces moved into the abandoned human positions, the packages activated simultaneously across the planet. They weren't bombs or weapons in the traditional sense. They were something far more insidious. Specialized nanites developed from Earth's most advanced technology, programmed to target the unique biology technology fusion that made up Blight soldiers. The microscopic machines spread like a mist, invisible and unstoppable. When they reached a Blight soldier, they infiltrated the seams of their armor and began to separate the biological components from the technological ones. Across the battlefield, Blight soldiers suddenly collapse, their armor separating from their bodies, the connection between machine and flesh severed. "What is happening?" Vex demanded as reports flooded in from his ground commanders. Unknown weapon, his science officer replied, panic evident in his voice. It's spreading through our ranks. Soldiers are coming apart. In orbit, Admiral Wilson watched from her damaged flagship as the Blight fleet fell into disarray. All ships, this is Admiral Wilson. Execute final attack pattern. Target their command vessels while they're distracted. The remaining human ships, though damaged and outnumbered, suddenly surged forward with renewed purpose. They ignored the smaller Blight vessels and concentrated fire on the largest ships. On the surface, Ross led a counterattack against the confused Blight forces. Where the nanites had done their work, Blight soldiers lay helpless, their armor no longer functioning. Push them back, Ross shouted as human and Lumari fighters charged forward. Don't give them time to adapt. In his command ship, Vex watched his carefully planned invasion crumble. The nanite weapon was spreading to his ships now, carried by returning shuttles and rescue craft. General, his second-in-command said, we should retreat, regroup and return with new strategies against this weapon. For the first time in his long life of conquest, Vex considered retreat. These humans had done the impossible. They had found the Blight's weakness, the critical junction where biology met technology. Before he could give the order, the Defender appeared directly in front of his command ship, its weapons firing at point-blank range. The bridge exploded around him as Admiral Wilson completed her final attack run. 1 month later, Ross stood with Taylor and Admiral Wilson on a hillside overlooking the Lumari capital. Below them, construction teams worked to rebuild the city. The last Blight ships fled the system yesterday, Wilson said. Our long-range scouts report they're abandoning other conquered worlds too. The nanite weapon frightened them. They'll be back, Ross said, once they find a defense. And we'll be ready, Wilson replied. The galactic community has taken notice. 3 other species have requested alliances with Earth. They want our protection. Tellus 4 arms moved in a pattern of deep respect. From this day forward, the Lumari will tell the story of Earth's warriors. How you came when no one else would. How you faced the undefeatable and won. Ross looked at the rebuilt city, where Lumari children played in safety for the first time in years. We answered a call for help, he said simply. That's what humans do. As the 3 of them watched the sunset, ships from Earth arrived bringing supplies, medicine, and more builders to help restore the Lumari world. The universe had learned an important lesson. Threatening the innocent was dangerous, but threatening those under humanity's protection, that was suicide. The cry for help had brought humanity's wrath, and the galaxy would never be the same again.